welcome back to the Growing Grace podcast. On today's episode, I am going to be talking all about waiting. That the waiting season or waiting seasons in our lives are often the seasons that we dread somewhat the most, that we really don't enjoy being in waiting seasons typically. However, they are always so important and they always just bring so much value and they just teach us so many lessons. And so, right now, I'm currently in a waiting season. I am waiting on promises that God has given me, and I am waiting for healing. For those of you that don't know, I have a fractured ankle currently, and I am waiting for God to heal me. And this is one of those things where I heard something in class last night. Someone said that when people were lined up in front of Jesus and they came to him with their problems, he didn't tell them wait. He didn't say wait. He said, "Yes, I will heal you." And that doesn't mean that every healing is going to be instant. That doesn't mean that everything God promises us is going to be instant and just given to us right then and there. There are still those seasons of waiting. And so I just wanted to talk about it because this is one of the seasons that can cause us to really struggle, and it can make us just kind of get down, have a lot of questions, doubts, fears. And so I just thought it would be very important to do an episode on. And so I'm sure I've talked about it before, but once again, this is one of those things I've talked about briefly, but deserves its own episode. And so I'm pretty sure one of the episodes I talked about this on is going to be episode 30, which is God's plan versus our plan. Because so often we can have our plan in our minds of when we think something's going to happen or when we want to reach a certain goal by, but God's plans are always bigger, better, and sometimes different. And so another episode on waiting would be that one if you guys want to know more. But there are just so many examples in the Bible of waiting. Two of them that come to my mind instantly are Abraham being promised Isaac, being promised a son, and to be the father of many generations. And in the story, I'm not going to read it, but I'll just summarize it. In the story, God promises Abraham and his wife a son. He promises them that they are going to be, he promises Abraham that he's going to be the father of many nations. And years and years and years go by. And this promise hasn't come to pass yet. And eventually, Abraham takes the matters into his own hands, and he goes and has a son with his wife's maid servant. And God told him that that wasn't the plan that he had. And so God still came through on his promise and gave Abraham and Sarah Isaac. And through them, the nations were born. And so that's just one example. Another example is Moses and the Promised Land, where God tells Moses that he wants to lead his people, the Israelites, out of slavery in Egypt. And once again, years and years and years go by, and this promise just doesn't seem to be coming to pass. And the people get impatient and they start questioning God. They start worshiping false idols. They start just being angry at God, denying him. And because of that, some of them never got to experience the promise when it did come to pass, that the promised land was real. God did give it to his people, but because of their sin and their disobedience, they never got to experience it. And there's just countless more examples in the Bible. I have some verses picked out as well. One of them is in Psalm. It is Psalm chapter 27, verse 14, where it says, "Wait patiently for the Lord. Be brave and courageous. Yes, wait patiently for the Lord." And as hard as it can be, it is so important that in waiting seasons, we don't get like the Israelites. We don't get to the point of denying God and being angry at him and not being grateful for what he's already given. That God quite literally had manna come down from the heavens to feed the people when they complained about not having food. Yet they complained that the food that God gave them and provided out of nowhere wasn't good enough. And it's just so important that we don't become like those people. And yes, we're going to stumble. Just like I said, Abraham took matters into his own hands and had a child with a different woman that wasn't part of God's plan, but he used it anyways. And it's just important that when we do stumble like that, when we do take matters into our own hands, we realize it, we recognize it, and we lay it back down at God's feet. And we say, God, you promised this to me. That means you will make it come to pass. And something really important to remember too is that sometimes when God gives us a promise, we can be really good at trusting him and saying, okay, God, it's all you. But then it comes to a point where we're waiting on God, or we think we're waiting on God, and we're questioning why nothing's happening. But it's because God is really waiting on us. That he has told us the next steps to take. He's told us what to do, and we're just too scared, too timid, too shy. Or we don't think that we need to do anything and that God will just bring his promise to come to pass. And now sometimes that is true. There are certain cases. However, most of the time, God is waiting on us when we think that we're waiting on him. And so it is so important that in your waiting season, you are in constant prayer and just constant communication with God and saying, God, what do you want me to do next? While I'm in this waiting season, what can I do? And he will be faithful and he will tell you. Even if you have to pray that prayer multiple times, think about how many times Moses and Abraham had to pray and talk to God and have that conversation with him and be reminded of God's faithfulness. And so the next verse is in Proverbs. It is Proverbs chapter 20, verses 21 through 22, which say, an inheritance obtained too early in life is not a blessing in the end. Don't say, I will get even for this wrong. Wait for the Lord to handle the matter. And both of those verses are just very important. Verse 21, talking about obtaining something too early in life, not being a blessing in the end, is so important because sometimes we are waiting on something that's so good. We're just so excited. We can't wait. And we just are so ready, or we think we're ready. But God is always preparing us. That if God has promised us something and he hasn't given it to us yet, it's because he's still preparing us, or he's still preparing the blessing that is to come. And he wants to give it to us, but if he gives it to us too early, that blessing could lose its specialness, that it could be more harm than good in our lives. And he wants it to be a blessing, and a blessing in the fullest. And so it's important that when God promises us something, we say, okay, God, I trust that you are going to bring it to me in your time. And then the second verse that I read, verse 22, which says, don't say I will get even for this wrong. Wait for the Lord to handle the matter. It's important that we also don't take stuff into our own hands. Like I said, Abraham did it. We all do it. But it's important that when someone does us wrong, or when God makes a promise and it's just not happening the way we want it to or we thought it would, that we take the high road, that we trust God, and that we know that he's, like I said, he's faithful and he will bring it to pass. And so the next verse I'm going to read is in Lamentations chapter 3, verses 25 through 26, which say, the Lord is good to those who depend on him, to those who search for him. So it is good to wait quietly for salvation from the Lord. And so this is important because once again, it just shows us that waiting on the Lord is so incredibly important. It's so important because nothing that is meant for us will miss us, that God's timing is perfect, and that any good thing that is meant to come our way will come to us in his timing. And that, like I said, we just have to be patient. There are times where we are waiting on the Lord. There's times where he's waiting on us. And it's just important to partner with him in those waiting seasons, both of them. That no matter where you are at in life, you are once again just in constant communication and patiently waiting on the plans that God has. And so naturally, with most episodes I do, there's a song that connects so great to all of this. It is called Homeward by Benjamin William Hastings. And it was actually my number one song on my Spotify Wrapped this year. That it is just such a powerful song that so many of us can relate to, that I have just obviously been listening to on repeat. And part of it just says, I've asked you more than once to hurry up the plans. But what if where you want me is exactly where I am? 'Cause what I've learned from waiting is waiting never lasts. And it just, that part of the song just gets me every single time because we're all human. We all get impatient. We all get excited. We all get anxious for what God has next for us. And we ask him, like, God, can you hurry this up a little bit? Like, I'm just really excited for this thing. Can we hurry this thing up and get this bus moving? Like I'm ready, I'm excited. But like I said before, his timing is perfect. And he wants to bless us in abundance, and sometimes that means waiting. And so the next part that says, "But what if where you want me is exactly where I am?" is such a good reminder, because where God has you is exactly where he wants you to be. That as long as you are in accordance of his will, as long as you are doing everything he tells you to, as long as you are just abiding in him, he has you exactly where he wants you. That he has trusted you enough to reveal parts of your future. He has trusted you enough to give you these promises. Now it's your turn to return the favor and trust him. And the last part, because what I've learned from waiting is waiting never lasts. There's always an end to the waiting. The moment comes where you get the promise is fulfilled. It's not something that God is going to say, here, wait your entire life for this. He's going to give you that promise, and he's going to make it come to pass. He's going to give you peace if you allow him to. He's going to give you peace while in that waiting. And the last two verses I have, the first one is in Psalm 37, verse 7. And it says, "Be still in the presence of the Lord and wait patiently for him to act. Don't worry about evil people who prosper or fret about their wicked schemes." And that just really ties into the verse I read before about not getting even and waiting on the Lord to act. That we have to wait patient in every aspect of our life. That sometimes it's not waiting on a promise. Sometimes it's waiting on healing. Sometimes it's waiting on seeing people in your life come to Jesus. Sometimes it's waiting on seeing the wicked and evil people in your life. It's just waiting for them to either come to Jesus or just to have a moment where they realize that what they're doing isn't okay. That in all of those instances alike, we're still called to wait. Like I said before, take the high road, wait, give it to God. And Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31 says, "But those who trust in the Lord will find new strength. They will soar high on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint." And I think that's a perfect reminder, once again, that when we're waiting, we can get so tired. We can get so badgered and beaten down that we just want to give up. We want to give up on the promise. We want to give up on the belief that he'll heal. We want to give up on the belief that the prodigal will come home. But it is so important that we take this verse and we run with it. We take it in our heart, because God wants to give us peace, like I said. He wants to give us strength. He wants to renew your strength while you're in the waiting. And one of the biggest questions around waiting is, how do I do it? How do I wait? And I'm still figuring out that question, the answer to that question myself. That I still struggle with waiting. I still struggle with not wanting God to just hurry up the plan and to just give me the promises that he has promised. But there are so many lessons in the in-between, God giving you a promise, giving you a word, and making it come to pass. There are so many lessons, and even with my ankle, and just me not being able to do everything I normally could do, I'm able to connect with people on a different level. I am able to see the community that I have, be reminded of the community that I have, how many people care about me and love me, and people are just showing up. God is showing their love, showing his love through them, and it is just so amazing. And so my answer, my best advice to how do I wait is to just sit at God's feet. I have an episode on resting in his presence, and if I'm being honest, I felt like I was failing at that. I felt like I wasn't resting at God's feet. I wasn't resting in his peace. I was picking everything back up, and I was stressing and I was worrying. And then a guest pastor came to our church, and he spoke over me, and he says that I am peace, that I radiate peace, that people are able to drink from the peace that I present, and that I have learned wholeheartedly how to rest at God's feet. So even if you feel like you're failing, you're probably not. Like I said, stay in constant communication with God. Lean on the people that he has put in your life. If you don't have Christian friends, go to your church, make some friends, reach out to people. because God will place those people in your life, and he will teach you how to rest in him if you allow him to. And so, my challenge for you all this week is to reflect. What are you waiting on? What are you waiting for God to do? And what have you done to partner with him in that thing? And really reflect on that. And another thing to reflect on would be, are you waiting on God, or is God waiting on you? So thank you all so much for watching this episode, and I will see you all next week. Bye!